Hello again, everyone, and thanks for checking out our new segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out, a conversation about different aspects of the law from the unique perspective of our husband and wife team. The inside view comes from David Susler. He's Associate General Counsel of National Material LP. The outside view from Tina Martini, a partner at DLA Piper here in Chicago. I'm your host, Andy Shaw, President and CEO of the Better Government Association, and today's topic is making decisions. So we'll start with the most basic of questions. How do you make decisions? Neither one of you. I guess the first decision is who goes first.
Yeah, and it seems like it's the same decision every month.
I like my decision.
All right.
So, obviously, we all make a million decisions every day. So I'm not going to focus so much on the small decisions that we make. Although some would say you should always be very present in your life and be thoughtful about whatever you decide to do, whether it's big or small. I would say for the bigger decisions, I start with sort of, taking a step back and just reminding myself I'm about to make a big decision, because especially big decisions tend to carry some kind of emotion to them. There's obviously the logical side, and then there's the emotional side. And so when you know you're on the cusp of making a big decision, it's always good to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, I'm about to make a big decision. I usually have a gut reaction to something, and one of the things I've learned over the years is that my gut reaction to something often tends to be right, but I'm also an engineer and a lawyer, so I balance the gut with actually sitting down and doing a sort of like a pros and cons type of analysis. And I also, to the extent that it involves people, which a lot of decisions do, especially when you're dealing with like a leadership type of a decision, I talk to folks who are some of the interested parties, and just to get buy-in, to get people's thoughts on stuff, especially if it's something where I may feel like I really do need other people's perspectives.
Yeah, and just again, real quick, there's in the context of practicing, obviously I have a lot of maybe gut reactions built on years of practice and experience, so the decisions seem to be gut reactions and instantaneous, but there's still thought that goes on behind it, because if it's more simple, it's easier for me to synthesize the information, but it still requires fact gathering, and that may be reading the cases, reading the contract. And I think it's especially important to talk to other stakeholders, find out what happens. If I'm trying to interpret a contract clause, well, I know what the words say on the paper, but what does it mean in the context of my business? And I have to make a decision as to, do we go in this direction or this direction? I need to gather the facts.
And what are a couple of the toughest decisions you've had to make? I guess we should probably stay in the realm of your legal practice as opposed to just life in general, because that's the topic here.
Sure. There's some big and some small. Obviously, as I think we talked about last month, in reinventing myself from a personal injury private practice attorney to going in-house, that was a huge decision, and very, very difficult, because it was my lifelong goal to be a plaintiff's personal injury attorney, and here I was deciding to turn my back on that. So that was a big decision. In the strictest confines of practice, this private practice litigators face this all the time, and I find it's even harder in-house, trying to decide whether to settle a case because it's a good economic decision, even though based on the law and the facts you think you have a really strong position to win the case, but sometimes it just makes more sense to settle it. That's a really tough decision for me to make.
That's probably the most vexing one for lawyers almost every day when you litigate. I mean, you're not litigating, so you don't have to wait quiz.
Well, I mean, I don't do a lot of courtroom stuff, but I work alongside clients who are making decisions like that a lot, and they struggle with them.
And your toughest ones?
So I would say my toughest ones was making the career decision to go to law school and become a lawyer from being an engineer. That was, I come from a family of engineers and scientists, and so from a family perspective, I got a lot of support, but making the decision to do something that was very scary and very different from a path that I had established as a relatively young adult. I had decided to become an engineer and had a job lined up and everything, and turned all that down to sort of go on the new frontier. So that was really a very difficult decision. And then I had really set my hopes on and had set my sights and had taken a lot of classes to be a real estate and environmental lawyer. And then, so I made the decision here because I graduated into a recession that I was going to instead move into the intellectual property practice, which was really burgeoning at that point. This was like 1995, so it was 20 years ago. And, you know, really getting in on the ground level of a practice that had like 5 lawyers, which now globally we have over 400 lawyers in the group. So it was very exciting, but it was also pretty scary. I would say just a couple of other instances are, you know, taking on certain leadership roles and other roles that sort of take me outside of my comfort zone. Those were kind of just, they were tough because it was sort of marking the end of, you know, as David had mentioned earlier, just, you know, liking the momentum going a certain way in your life and deciding to sort of change course and do something different and not really knowing what's going to happen there. And then also once you love something, deciding, you know what, maybe it's best for me to move into something else. So sort of saying goodbye to certain things, you know, not really relationships so much as just roles that I've had that I've loved, but you sort of come to a point where you're like, you know what, it's better for somebody else to step in now. I've sort of done everything I've wanted to do and can do, and it's another person's turn.
So many, oh, I'm sorry.
I want to throw in another thing, and I know I mentioned this in the column, but it's kind of continuing the theme from last month's column of reinventing yourself and talking about, do you do it voluntarily or involuntarily? Another one of the most difficult decisions to make is whether to terminate an employee. And those decisions in my role, they're almost always run through me and the company for the legal risk management of it. And sometimes it's actually a factually and legally very easy decision to make. This person, you know, they showed up to work intoxicated, for example. You can't have that, especially in a factory. So that's an easy decision to make. But I still can't, you know, I make the decision based on the facts, but we're all still human beings. And I still know on the human side, that should be an auspicious decision to make, because you're forcing that person to reinvent themselves in some way or another, and it's tough.
And so a final one, is there like a supreme lesson learned from all the years and all the decisions? Is there sort of a moral to the story that you could pass on to somebody, just collectively, like a rule of thumb for good decision making?
Well, I think it's important to learn to trust your judgment, trust your instinct, but don't act on that alone. You have to be well informed. You have to have the facts.
I would say I agree with David that you get the facts as much as you can. Sometimes I've noticed, though, at least for me, some of the biggest decisions I've had to make, a couple of things I've noticed as sort of data points over time is, number one, sometimes you really don't have the time to get all the facts. So you do the best with what you've got, and you have to sort of go with your gut also.
It's like the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, and also I think one of the things I've learned too, some of it has been through hard lessons, is that I used to give so much credibility and weight to what other people thought. And
now you realize they're mostly dummies?
Well, I'm not, and you know, and I, as I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, that I do still very much value what people have to say. But I think what I really do now is understand that everybody has a lens through which they look at the world. Everybody has a certain point of view. So as you're weighing what advice you get from people, you always have to, I guess, temper it by understanding the point of view from which they are giving you that assessment. And I guess as part of the equation, think about, well, how relevant is this person's point of view? Does this person really see all the other moving pieces? So it's just really, I think, learning how to balance all of the different things that come together is what I've learned with time.
Yeah, I agree, and especially for the larger decisions that carry more weight, whether it be a career move or, you know, recommending a company invest a certain, you know, amount of money in or a strategic direction. Having a trusted advisor, as we wrote about recently, having somebody you can go to bounce that off is very important. But again, at the end, you have to filter it through your lens as well.
And that final word actually sets up the next taping, which I'll mention in a second. David, Tina, thanks. This has been another segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out. I'm Andy Shaw, and next time we will talk about the importance of confidants. Not confidence, but confidants. Tune back in, and we'll see you soon.